On December 1st, Coach Brian Smith from Ohio University, the head coach of Ohio University, I believe he was an assistant who was promoted to be the head coach on December 1st. I believe they put him on leave, told him he had to go. And then this Wednesday, they finally fired him. And they cited that he's had extra marital affairs. He was also found to be intoxicated at a Ohio University event. And they said that he showed, all right, this man showed a inebriated demeanor, all right? So your boy was tipsy, all right? He was tipsy. He was drunk on the job. He was drunk at an event. And they said extramarital affairs. So one thing that they cited, and I was reading ESPN this morning, one thing that they cited was that he had a affair with a 40-year-old, a 41-year-old, which a 41-year-old, it's kind of strange. I believe that's a student. I mean, that's a older student, but I mean, listen, I know students who went back to school at 60. So I believe that there's a 41-year-old student that he had an affair with, but then they cite extramarital affairs. So Coach Brian Smith has been caught numerous times with numerous things going on, all right? And he's married, but he's saying that him and his wife have been going through a divorce, and so in his mind, this doesn't count, right? He was not an affair because they were going through something. They're trying to get a divorce, and him and his wife were separated at the time. He's had these extracurricular activities going on supposedly, but you don't get fired. All right, listen, he had 2.5 million left on his contract. A big name university like that does not just fire you and citing extramarital affairs and you being inebriated and all kinds of stuff. They don't just fire you for no reason if there's in there, right? If there's smoke, there's fire, right? My mother-in-law goes, if there's smoke, there's fire, right? So if there's smoke, there's fire. There's some fire there, there's some heat there, there's something going on there. And it's another coaching situation where we have a married man doing single things, all right? And honestly, if you look at it from a Christian perspective, honestly, even as a single person, you shouldn't be sleeping around, right? Because you're building soul ties and creating soul ties. So you don't want to have all these different soul ties tied to Stacy and Susie and Sharon and all these different people. You don't want to have that. You want to date. You want to find the person who has the qualities of a wife, and then you want to get married, right? And then once you get married, then you two decide to go get in the bed together. And you create your family and do those kind of things. And I mean, you understand that. And I'm just stating that for those who may not be aware of it. That's my stance. And it's a Christian stance on the way things should be. Now, I know our society is different. Our society is interesting. But if we closed our legs more, then we would have less issues, right? If he was trying to sleep around and his woman said, nope, access denied, closed up shop, I'm not doing that, I'm waiting for marriage, then, and it's not to put any blame on the woman. It takes two to tango, right? He has an issue, and these women who wanted to deal with him have an issue, and people are seeking love in all the wrong places. So it takes two to tango. I blame both sides. But if we follow those principles more closely, we would have less of an issue in our society today. But that's just wishful thinking. Here's what we can learn. I said this in a video before, and I'll say it again. Women, when you choose your man, he has to be above reproach. Now, when I say above reproach, I do not mean perfect. All right? Nobody is perfect. All right? Jesus was perfect. We're not perfect. We all have a sinful nature. There's sin all up in this flesh, and we fight it daily. And we have to war against it daily through the word of God and through prayer. Now, when you get deeper with fasting, because fasting will begin to break those strongholds over your life. That's a whole separate topic. But above reproach, to me, is someone who has high moral integrity. All right, someone who is first submitted to God, and is doing their best to follow all of what God has commanded us to follow. All right, and even that's a tall task. So that's why I say trying to do their best, because we all are going to have our vices. We all are going to have our things that we have to fight against and we have to war against. But you got to look at, how is this man leaning? All right. If most of the week he's leaning to the right, he's leaning in the right direction, and then he might have a slip with his temper here and there. He might not treat you the way you prefer to be treated. He might ignore your feelings from time to time. Men do that. Sometimes men don't comprehend fully how to even communicate with the woman, how to even deal with the woman's emotions. Something that most men have to learn over time. Right? Now, I was raised by a single mother. I'm a little more attuned and in tune with my wife's emotions and things like that. And I like to communicate and things like that. But again, I even learned that over time. Okay? So where is he leaning? Where is he leaning? If he's leaning more towards the right, you got you a good man. If he's leaning more towards the left most of the week, most of the time, most of the month, when you're dating your man for the first 3 months, see during that period where he leans the most, how far he leans to the left, how far he leans to the right. I mean, how far does he lean on God? How far does he lean to being in love with his own devices, his own vices, his own evil nature that lives within his flesh? Which way is he leaning mostly? Is he cussing you out all the time? Is he cussing other people all the time? Is he just dropping F-bombs on everybody and everything? During that period, would you have observed him? Is it more of those than it is him trying to be someone who angers slowly? Is it something that he's working on? Or does he not care? Right? These are things that we have to evaluate. So he has to be above reproach. Has to be leaning in the right direction. Again, I mentioned vices. You got to make sure that your man is not heavily dependent on any substances. Now, I'm sipping on this bad boy. Constantly. That's what I rely on to give me energy to be able to speak, to be able to fuel me throughout the day. Does he need to rely on drugs to be able to communicate with you? Does he have to drink a whole lot? Right? Is he loose off the goose? Is he sipping on the Henny all the time? And then he can't love you or express love or even try and hold you or hold your hand or anything unless he's under the influence of something? That's a problem, right? And with Coach Smith, we see that he's probably leaning on that alcohol to bring out the side of him for him to be able to interact with people better, probably. And he clearly has an issue, because what happens sometimes, people socially drink or socially do a drug, and then it gets out of hand real quick, because the more you do it, the more your body begins to crave it, and now you're in addiction, right? And now you're an addict. So you got to make sure that the man that you choose is not relying heavily on alternative substances, is what I'll call it, right? He like a lot of sugar as opposed to liking a lot of Henny. I go with the sugar guy. You can help him break a sugar habit. It might be a little bit harder to get him to let go of that Henny, let go of that bottle, right? So we have being above approach, again, looking at what substances that they intake, are they submitted to God? And then also you have to look at, do you have a man that's craving power? Because what tends to happen is once someone gets a promotion, okay, my wife is telling me that it's time for me to get off. I gotta hop on another call. I hop on a call with our church, so I gotta get off with you guys. But if a man is craving power, that shows signs of someone that wants to, if they were a kid, right? They want to kick over another kid's sandcastle so that they can have the tallest sandcastle, right? What are you talking about, Jules? This is someone who wants to be made feel big so everyone else can be small. They have a inferiority complex, right? They want to be made to feel superior because of something that they're lacking within themselves. So you gotta look at your man and say, does this person feel small all the time? Do they have a self-esteem issue? Do they just want power for the sake of controlling people? And if so, that's an area where you can help him and make him more aware and direct him a little bit, where you can, because, men are only going to listen to what they want to listen to. But direct him a little bit and let him know, hey, do you want this position for the right reasons? All right, just things to think about.